The first time I saw my name on the refinance documents, it was written in blue ink beneath a notary stamp dated October 18. That date mattered because on October 18, I had been standing inside an elementary school cafeteria 40 miles away, helping conduct a fire safety inspection until 4:37 p.m. My work badge had recorded every door I entered. According to the document in my hands, I had signed my parents' mortgage papers at 3:15. I sat in my car outside Franklin County Records with the pages spread across the steering wheel. The loan amount was $286,400. My parents' house had been used as collateral, but my name appeared as a co-borrower. The signature looked close enough to fool someone who had only seen my handwriting on birthday cards. It was not close enough to fool me. My mother had copied the tall loop I used in the letter L. She had missed the way I crossed the final T in my last name. That small mistake was the first loose thread. The second was the notary's name. Marion Holt. I knew Marion. Years earlier, she had notarized documents for the county planning office where I worked. She remembered faces, dates, and which hand people used to sign. 3 days later, I would place those refinance papers in front of her and ask one question that would split my family in half. Did you watch me sign this? Her answer would cost my parents their loan, their reputation, and the one daughter they believed would never confront them. But before I could call Marion, I had to understand why my parents had needed almost $300,000 badly enough to forge my name. If you have ever been called selfish for refusing to carry a burden you never agreed to, stay with me. My name is Lauren Mercer. I was 47 then, divorced, childless, and employed as a municipal building inspector in a small Ohio city called Bellwether. My job was to notice things people tried to cover: fresh paint over water damage, furniture placed beneath sagging ceilings, permit numbers copied from unrelated properties. At work, suspicion made me competent. At home, it made me feel disloyal. My parents, Dennis and Elaine Mercer, had lived in the same brick ranch house on Ashbrook Drive since 1989. They paid $92,000 for it. My father called it the only smart financial decision he had ever made. That was not true, but correcting my father had never been encouraged in our family. The refinance came to my attention because a debt verification letter arrived at my apartment. I almost threw it away, assuming it was another insurance advertisement. Then I noticed the lender's name and the last 4 digits of a loan I did not recognize. I called my mother before I called the bank. There was a pause after I explained the letter. Not a confused pause, a prepared one. "Oh," she said softly, "your father was going to talk to you." "About what?" Another silence. I heard a drawer close in her kitchen. "Lauren, don't make this frightening before you know the whole story." She always said that when the whole story was already frightening. "What did Dad do?" My mother lowered her voice. "He did what he had to do to keep the family together." Then she hung up. I looked again at the blue signature beneath my name and understood something that should have occurred to me years earlier. In my family, keeping everyone together had always meant tying something to me. In our family, I was the person invited early and thanked late. My younger brother, Adam, arrived when dinner was ready. I came at noon to move folding tables, pick up ice, and listen while my mother explained why Adam was under so much pressure. "He has 2 children," she would say, as if that settled every question. Adam was 43, married to Kendra, and owned a struggling kitchen remodeling company called Mercer Built. My parents described him as an entrepreneur. His suppliers described him as 30 days overdue. I had no children, so my time was treated like an empty room anyone could use. That belief began long before adulthood. When I was 17, I spent one summer working at a grocery store and saved $1,180 for community college. 2 weeks before classes, my father's truck transmission failed. He stood in the garage rubbing the back of his neck while my mother told me how embarrassed he was to ask. "You're the practical one," she said. "Adam's still a kid." Adam was 13. I handed over the money. My father promised to repay me by Christmas. By Christmas, no one mentioned it. At 29, I postponed buying my first home because my parents needed help replacing their roof. At 38, during my divorce, my mother asked me to drive Adam to 3 contractor meetings because his license had been suspended over unpaid tickets. Each request arrived dressed as an emergency. Each sacrifice was later remembered as my choice. My father rarely asked directly. He preferred statements that sounded like weather reports. "Your brother's in a bind. Your mother's worried sick. Family doesn't keep score." My mother handled the details. She knew exactly which guilt worked best on each of us. With Adam, she used rescue. With me, she used approval. When I solved a problem, she touched my arm and said, "I don't know what we'd do without you." For years, I mistook that sentence for love. The Sunday after the debt letter arrived, I drove to Ashbrook Drive without warning. My father's pickup was in the driveway. Adam's van was parked along the curb, one rear door dented and secured with a bungee cord. Through the front window, I saw the 3 of them at the dining table. My mother had arranged 4 place settings. She always did that when she expected me to fix something. The refinance papers were stacked beside my father's coffee cup. A yellow legal pad sat in front of Adam, covered with figures. When I entered, no one looked surprised. My father pulled out the empty chair. "Sit down, Lauren." I remained standing. Adam tapped his pen against the table. "Before you overreact, you need to understand what was at stake. My name is on a mortgage I never signed. Kendra was not there. That told me this was not a family discussion. It was a strategy meeting." My mother folded her napkin into smaller and smaller squares. "We knew you would say no if we asked you too soon. Too soon. Not if they asked me." When my father pushed the papers toward the empty chair. "Sit," he repeated. "We can explain why this had to happen." I looked at the place they had set for me and realized they had already decided my role. They did not expect forgiveness. They expected cooperation. I sat because I wanted the facts, not because my father told me to. Adam turned the yellow pad around. At the top, he had written $214,700 and circled it twice. "My business hit a cash flow problem," he said, temporary. 3 commercial clients delayed payment at the same time. "How much do they owe you?" He glanced at my father. That was my answer. My mother slid a mug toward me, though I had not asked for coffee. Adam had employees depending on him. 6, Adam said, and their families. He spoke as though forging my signature had been an act of public service. The refinance money had paid off my parents' remaining mortgage, covered Adam's business debts, and settled nearly $38,000 in personal credit cards. My father had also taken $12,500 to repair the foundation beneath the back bedroom. "You borrowed $286,000, I said. "To solve problems worth less than that." "There were closing costs," my father replied. His tone was almost offended, as if I had questioned his arithmetic instead of his crime. I picked up the first page. My annual income was listed as $84,600. My employer was correct. So was my apartment address and the balance on my car loan. They had not guessed. Someone had collected my information. "How did you get my pay records?" My mother's fingers stopped folding the napkin. Last March, she had asked me to bring tax documents to her house because she wanted help comparing Medicare plans with their household expenses. I had left a folder in her desk overnight. The folder had contained my W-2, a bank statement, and a copy of my driver's license. "I trusted you," I said. "We didn't steal anything," she answered quickly. "We copied what the lender needed." Adam leaned forward. "The payments are coming from the business. Your credit won't be touched as long as we stay current." As long as? His jaw tightened. That was when my father admitted the first payment had already been missed. The lender had sent notices to Ashbrook Drive, but the certified letter that reached me triggered a fraud alert because my address did not match the application. My parents had listed their house as my primary residence. They had not simply added my name to a loan. They had built a version of my life that made the loan possible. I stood and placed the coffee mug back in front of my mother. "You will call the lender today and tell them I never signed." My father's chair scraped against the floor. "No. You'll give Adam 90 days. I'm not asking." His face changed then, the embarrassment disappeared. What remained was fear. "If you report this," he said, "they could take the house." I looked at Adam's circled number, my mother's folded napkin, and the empty place setting prepared for my surrender. Then I took photographs of every page. "You should have thought about the house before you used my name to save his business." I left while my mother was still saying my name, and before I reached my car, Adam sent the message that ended any chance of handling it quietly. "If you destroy Mom and Dad over paperwork, everyone will know what kind of daughter you are." The lender's fraud department asked me to send a written statement, copies of my identification, and proof that I had been elsewhere when the loan was signed. I expected the process to be simple. It was not. The following Tuesday, my credit union froze my home equity application. I had been planning to buy a small duplex near the hospital, live upstairs, and rent the lower unit. The loan officer explained that the Ashbrook mortgage had pushed my debt-to-income ratio beyond their limit. My parents had not only endangered their house, they had taken mine before I ever purchased it. I spent 2 evenings assembling a timeline. My inspection schedule showed I entered Bellwether Elementary at 1:08 p.m. Security footage placed me in the cafeteria at 3:15. A mileage report showed my city vehicle left the school at 4:42. Then I examined the refinance package again. The signature page listed Marion Holt as the notary, but the identification section contained no copy of my driver's license. There was only a handwritten notation, ID previously verified. That was irregular enough to make my stomach tighten. I called Marion. Her voice was older than I remembered, but precise. "Lauren Mercer," she said. "Building department. Left-handed." I looked at the forged signature. It slanted right. We met the next morning at a bakery near the courthouse. Marion arrived carrying a red accordion file and wearing the same silver watch she had worn during county closings years earlier. When I placed the documents in front of her, she did not touch them immediately. "That's my seal," she said. "Did you notarize this?" Her mouth tightened. "I notarized a refinance package for Dennis and Elaine Mercer on October 18th, and me?" The word was quiet. "Certain." Marion opened the red file. Her journal contained 2 signatures for that appointment. my father's and my mother's. There should have been 3. She remembered my father saying I had been delayed at work. He promised to bring me to her office the following morning. Marion had refused to complete my section without me. But your seal is here, I said. She removed her glasses. Dennis asked me to leave the prepared pages with him so his lender could review them. I should never have done that. The next day, Marion discovered 3 stamped acknowledgement pages missing from the packet. My father claimed the lender had taken them. She believed him because she had known my parents through church for 26 years. She had retired 2 months later and never learned my page had been completed. Before we left, Marianne signed an affidavit stating that I had never appeared before her. Then she told me something worse. My father had not approached her alone. Adam had been sitting beside him, holding a folder containing a photocopy of my license. The deception had not begun when the loan became desperate. It had begun months earlier inside my mother's locked desk drawer. For 11 days, I lived between phone calls. The lender requested documents I had already sent. The credit bureaus placed fraud alerts on my files but warned that removing the mortgage could take months. My duplex application expired and the seller accepted another offer. I drove past the property once after the sale. The porch leaned slightly to the east. I had planned to repair it myself in spring and plant herbs along the back fence. Watching another woman carry boxes through the front door hurt more than I expected. My parents had taken something that did not exist yet, which made explaining the loss difficult. At work, I began making small mistakes. I entered the wrong permit number on a report. I left my tape measure at a job site. During an inspection of a converted warehouse, I approved a stair railing before noticing the spacing between the balusters violated code. My supervisor, Teresa Alvarez, returned the report without signing it. "You don't miss things like this," she said. Teresa was 60, practical, and incapable of pretending not to notice trouble. I told her enough to explain the distraction but left out my parents' names. She listened, then tapped the rejected report with one finger. "Being betrayed doesn't make you incompetent," she said. "But exhaustion will." She helped me request 2 earnestly. Nothing more. She did not offer a lawyer, a spare room, or a miraculous solution. She simply gave me time to think before I caused damage somewhere else. I used the first day to meet with a consumer attorney named Priya Shah. Her office sat above a tax preparation business and smelled faintly of burnt coffee. Priya reviewed Marion's affidavit, my employment records, Adam's message, and the loan documents. "This is strong evidence," she said. "But strong evidence does not mean fast evidence." She explained that the lender would conduct its own investigation. The notary's missing pages complicated matters. My parents might claim I had agreed verbally and changed my mind after Adam's business failed. "They can say that?" I asked. "People can say almost anything. Documentation decides what survives." Priya advised me to communicate only in writing and preserve every message. That evening, my mother called 6 times. On the 7th, I answered. She was crying before I spoke. "Your father's blood pressure is dangerously high. Adam says the bank froze his accounts. Lauren, please come home." For a moment, the old machinery inside me started turning. My keys were already in my hand. Then I noticed the blue ink copy of my forged signature on the table. "Is Dad in the hospital?" "No, but he could be if this continues." That wasn't my question. Her crying stopped. I set the keys down. "I'll speak to his doctor if he authorizes it. I will not discuss the loan by phone." My mother whispered, "You sound like a stranger." Perhaps I did. The following morning, an envelope appeared beneath my apartment door. Inside was my original tax folder, the one I had left at my parents' house months earlier. Every document was there except the photocopy of my driver's license. And tucked behind my W-2 was a business card for a loan broker I had never met. The business card belonged to Nolan Pierce, an independent loan broker whose office occupied a converted dental suite outside Dayton. Priya contacted him before I did. Nolan's first response was that he could not discuss a client's file without authorization. His second came 2 days later, after Priya sent Marion's affidavit and reminded him that my identity appeared throughout the application. He agreed to meet. His office contained 1 dying plant, 2 metal filing cabinets, and a framed certificate hanging slightly crooked. Nolan was in his 50s, with careful hair and the restless hands of a man who had spent several nights reconsidering his choices. "I believed you were participating," he said. "Did you ever speak to me? No, see me? Brisno receives email from me?" He looked down. "Your father handled family communications." Nolan opened a thick folder. Inside were printed emails from an address containing my full name. The messages approved the loan terms, confirmed my income, and said my inspection schedule made daytime appointments difficult. The language sounded nothing like me. Every message ended with warmest regards. I had never ended an email that way in my life. "Who created the address?" I asked. Nolan pointed to the original application. Adam's phone number was listed as the recovery contact. That was the midpoint where my case became stronger and my family's position became uglier. The emails proved planning, but Nolan also showed me something Priya had not expected. a signed disclosure stating that I intended to use part of the refinance proceeds to purchase an ownership interest in Mercer Built. On paper, I was not merely helping my brother. I was becoming his business partner. If creditors pursued the company, that false document could be used to claim I had benefited from the loan. Priya studied it twice. This may take more than removing a mortgage from your credit, she said. We may need to establish that you never had any ownership role. Nolan offered copies of everything. He claimed my father had assured him the family arrangement was temporary and that I would sign later. Did that not concern you? I asked. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the folder. It should have. Before I left, he handed me a sealed envelope addressed in my mother's handwriting. He said Elaine had delivered it with my employment documents and instructed him to open it only if the lender requested additional proof of my consent. Inside was a handwritten letter, supposedly from me. The signature was poor, the wording was worse. I trust my parents to make decisions for all of us because they have always known what is best for this family. Have you ever seen someone use your loyalty as evidence that you had no right to choose? That evening, I received an invitation to my parents' 40th anniversary dinner. Across the bottom, my mother had written one sentence, "Come home and we can still keep this private." I did not attend the anniversary dinner. At 6:15 that evening, my mother sent a photograph of the private room they had reserved at Bellwether Grill. Gold balloons floated above the table. A sheet cake read 40 years of family in dark green icing. My empty chair was between my parents. At 6:32, Adam texted, "People are asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell them?" I replied, "Tell them I did not agree to be discussed." By 9, 3 relatives had called. My aunt accused me of punishing my parents over a misunderstanding. A cousin said my father had spent the evening defending me, claiming I was under tremendous stress. The family story was already being rewritten. According to them, I had promised to join the refinance, then panicked when Adam's company struggled. My parents had risked their retirement to help both of their children, and I was now abandoning them to protect my credit score. 2 days later, my father arrived at my apartment. He carried a white bakery box tied with string. Inside were 2 slices of anniversary cake, their icing pressed against the lid. "I thought you might want some," he said. It was such an ordinary gesture that for one dangerous second, I wanted to let him inside and pretend we were still a family capable of sharing cake without attaching a debt to it. We sat in the building's small lobby. My father looked thinner. His hands shook slightly as he untied and retied the string. "Adam can repay the loan," he said. "He has a hotel renovation contract coming. Does he have a signed agreement? He has a verbal commitment." I almost smiled. My father had used my name on the strength of another promise no one could prove. He offered me a deal. If I withdrew the fraud complaint, my parents would sell the house within 6 months. The proceeds would pay off the refinance, and they would sign a written agreement releasing me from any responsibility. "The loan already makes me responsible," I said, "only temporarily." He placed the bakery box between us. Then his voice softened. "Your mother is terrified. That house is the last thing she has from a life that made sense." I knew what he meant. My mother had grown up moving between relatives after her own father disappeared. Ashbrook Drive was the first home she had ever trusted not to vanish. For the first time, I understood why she had protected it with such desperation. But understanding the fear did not make my signature hers. "I will support a legitimate sale," I said. "I will not lie to preserve the loan." My father stared at the cake box for a long time. When he stood, he left it behind. That evening, Priya forwarded me a new email from the lender. My parents had submitted sworn statements claiming I signed the papers privately and asked Marion to notarize them afterward. Marion's memory was no longer just evidence. It was about to be attacked. Marion did not react when Priya told her what my parents had claimed. She simply opened her red accordion file and ran one finger down the journal page from October 18. "My records are accurate," she said. We were seated in a conference room at the lender's regional office. A mediation session had been scheduled for the following Thursday. The lender wanted to determine whether the loan could be unwound without forcing an immediate foreclosure. Marion had agreed to attend. So had Nolan. My parents were bringing their own attorney. Adam would be present because his company had received most of the proceeds. For the first time, everyone who had handled my identity would be sitting at one table. Priya prepared me for the possibility that no one would admit wrongdoing. "You don't need a confession," she said. "You need a consistent timeline." We laid the evidence across her office floor. My work badge report, the school's security footage, Marion's journal, Nolan's emails, Adam's recovery number, the false ownership disclosure, my mother's handwritten letter, the missing copy of my license. The pattern reminded me of inspecting a damaged building. One crack could be cosmetic. 6 cracks running in the same direction meant the foundation had moved. But there was still one weak point. Marion had left stamped pages with my father. My parents' attorney could argue that she had forgotten a later meeting or mishandled her record keeping. Marion understood that before we said it. She removed her silver watch and placed it on the table. "My husband gave me this when I became a notary," she said. "I wore it to every appointment for 31 years. The crystal was scratched near the number 4. She explained that after discovering the missing acknowledgement pages, she had written herself a private incident memo. She had not reported my father because he returned 2 unused pages and insisted the third had gone to the lender by mistake. Priya's expression sharpened. "Do you still have the memo?" Marian nodded. "It recorded the date, the missing page numbers, and my father's promise to bring me in personally. He never had. The night before mediation, my mother asked to meet me alone at Ashbrook Drive. I found her in the kitchen polishing the silverware she used only at Christmas. She looked smaller without my father and Adam beside her. I created the email address," she said. Her hands kept moving. "Adam wrote the messages. Your father handled Marian. We each did one part, so no one had to feel responsible for all of it." "Who signed my name?" She placed a spoon beside the others. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she told me the truth beneath the paperwork. She believed Adam would lose his business, his marriage, and possibly his access to his children if they did not rescue him. She believed I would survive the risk because I always had. "You were the strong one," she whispered. "No, Mom, I was the available one." Her face tightened as if I had removed something she needed to believe. She asked me not to use her admission at mediation. I looked at the polished silverware, each piece arranged perfectly while the house around it stood against a fraudulent loan. "I won't repeat what you said tonight," I told her, "but I will not protect the lie." When I left, she remained at the table holding one spoon in both hands. The next morning, Marian arrived at the lender's office wearing her silver watch. Under her arm was the journal with the line where my signature should have been. It was still empty. The mediation room had no windows. A long laminate table divided us into sides. Priya and I sat opposite my parents, Adam, and their attorney. Nolan occupied the far end beside 2 representatives from the lender. Marian sat near the door with her red file closed in front of her. My mother had brought a leather handbag I recognized from church. She kept both hands wrapped around its handles. The lender's attorney began with the possibility of correcting the loan rather than invalidating it. My parents could sell the house voluntarily, Adam could enter a repayment agreement, and my name could be removed after the balance was satisfied. "After?" I asked. The attorney adjusted his glasses. "That would be the simplest resolution, for everyone except Lauren," Priya said. My father's lawyer insisted I had initially consented. He displayed the emails and the handwritten letter as evidence of a family agreement. Priya did not argue with him. She asked Nolan one question. "Did you ever communicate directly with Lauren Mercer?" "No." Then she asked Marian whether I had appeared before her on October 18 or any later date. Marian opened her journal. "No." My father's lawyer leaned toward her. "Isn't it true that you left notarized pages in Dennis Mercer's possession?" "Yes," Marian replied, and documented the missing acknowledgement the following morning. She placed the incident memo on the table. My father stopped tapping his thumb. Priya added my badge records, the cafeteria footage, and the loan application showing Adam's number attached to the false email account. One piece at a time, she built the timeline without raising her voice. Adam interrupted when the ownership disclosure appeared. She knew I was struggling. "Knowing is not signing," I said. He turned toward me. "You would rather lose the house than give us time?" That question had controlled me most of my life. It made every consequence sound like something I had chosen. I slid the forged letter across the table until it rested between my parents. "You wrote that I trusted you to decide for me," I said. "That is not consent. It is the reason you believed you could get away without it." My mother stared at the signature she had copied. My father said the house had to be protected. I looked at the empty line in Marian's journal. No house is protected by making another person legally disappear. The lender's representatives asked for a recess. When they returned, they announced that the loan would be referred for formal fraud review. Collection activity against me would be suspended, and the mortgage would be removed from my credit while the investigation proceeded. My parents would be required to list the property for sale or negotiate a new loan based only on their legitimate income. Adam's business would receive no further protection from the house. My mother finally released the handbag. My father looked at me as though I had demolished something. Perhaps I had. But some structures become dangerous long before anyone has the courage to condemn them. As the meeting ended, my mother pushed the forged letter toward me. I left it on the table. The only thing I took was a copy of the blank journal line. The investigation lasted 7 months. The lender formally removed me from the loan, corrected the credit reporting, and canceled the false ownership disclosure connected to Mercer Built. Nolan surrendered his brokerage license rather than contest the violations found in his file. Marian received a reprimand for leaving stamped pages unsecured, but her records cleared her of witnessing my signature. My parents sold Ashbrook Drive in May. After paying the refinance balance, fees, and closing costs, they had enough left for a modest 2-bedroom condominium. My father called once to tell me the sale price. $318,000, as though a number could make the outcome neutral. Adam closed Mercer Built 3 weeks later. He took a project management position with another contractor and began making monthly payments under an agreement with my parents. Kendra stayed with him, though I heard through relatives that she required separate accounts and access to every business record. Consequences did not arrive like thunder. They arrived as smaller rooms, supervised money, unanswered invitations, and relatives gradually learning that the version they had been told could not survive the documents. My mother wrote me 4 letters. I returned none of them, but I read them. The first defended what she had done. The second blamed Adam. The third blamed fear. In the fourth, she wrote, "I treated your strength like property the family owned." That was the first apology that did not ask me to erase the cost. We now speak once a month. The calls are limited. Adam is not discussed. Money is not requested. When my mother begins a sentence with, "Your father thinks you should," I end the conversation. It is not forgiveness in the way my family wants to find it. It is contact with walls strong enough to remain standing. A year after the mediation, I found another duplex. It cost $16,000 more than the first and needed new plumbing beneath the upstairs bathroom. I negotiated the price, hired an independent inspector, and read every page before signing. At closing, the notary slid a blue pen toward me. For a moment, I saw the copied loop in the false signature and the empty line in Marian's journal. Then I signed slowly, my own name, my own decision, my own debt. The old tax folder now holds the deed to the duplex. The bakery box is gone, but I kept the string from it in the back of the folder, not as a memory of cake, but as a reminder of how gently control can be tied around a person. My parents once believed a family stayed together by placing every burden on the member least likely to let it fall. I learned that a safe structure does not depend on one load-bearing woman. It stands because everyone carries what belongs to them. If you have ever reclaimed your name from people who mistook your loyalty for permission, share the boundary that finally changed your life, and subscribe for more stories about quiet courage that leaves a permanent record.